Hello everyone. So this is a redo no, of our discussion on chapter 4, the first part of chapter 4, which is carbohydrates. So actually nahumana ni siya but wala to siya na save no katong Friday, but yeah, I had to redo this. But anyways, the session started with viewing no of a YouTube video. Okay, so
Everyone loves spreadsheets. Actually, they don't. But check this out.
I
Go to
will just leave this
monday.com.
for you to watch. No, you have to watch this before continuing to this recording. Kay mao man ni ang nauna sa session so that you will have like a better grasp no of the content of this particular topic. So after you're done watching this video, then you can proceed uh, to this point no of the recording. Okay, so I'm gonna close this one. So just make sure not to watch that before continuing to this point. Okay, so carbohydrates is one of the macronutrients. Okay, so upat nga macronutrients. So that's why this chapter contains like four parts. Okay, each of that parts corresponds to a particular macronutrient. So let's start with carbohydrates. So this is the overview. This is the outline of the presentation. So, what are carbohydrates? Okay, these are macronutrients. Many food contain carbohydrates, no, but not all carbohydrates are created equal across our food sources because the type, the quality of carbohydrates varies from one group to another. Just like this one, um, in this group, you can see this no nga na ay mga cereals, okay, and then its products. Okay, we have the flour and also the products of flour like bread and other bakery products. Okay, so what kind or what type of carbohydrates can you find in this food group? Okay, so it's actually starch. Okay, starch is a complex carbohydrate. It's a polysaccharide. Okay, so in this food group, the type or the kind or the quality of carbohydrate that you can find here is different from the previous one. Why? Because uh, fruits, ripe fruits, do not contain any significant amount of flour, okay, or any significant amount of starch. Okay, because of course we consume fruits mostly no in their ripe form, and starch is bland tasting, it's not sweet. So since these fruits when they are ripe they are sweet tasting, so you can expect no, that these fruits do not contain like significant amount of starch anymore because during the ripening process starch is converted to sugars. So that's why they are now sweet tasting. Okay. So yeah, so wala na kay makuha nga starch diri unlike the previous one. So ang makita na nimo diri is sugars. Okay, simple sugars or intrinsic sugar. So later no I'll discuss the different types of sugars, but actually that the kind of sugars that you can find in this are actually okay. Uh dare I say healthy no compared to other types of sugars. Okay, and aside from sugars you can also like find other types of carbohydrates here like fiber. Okay, so actually sugar and fiber ang majority no or predominant na carbohydrate that you can find in this food group. Okay, the next is the vegetables. And again, lahi na sad siya og type of carbohydrates. Because unlike the two, kani siya kay ang pinaka-daghan no, or pinaka-majority nga carbohydrate nga makita nimo diri is cellulose, which is a type of dietary fiber. And vegetables, unlike fruits, do not contain any significant amount of sugar. So that's why vegetables taste bland. Okay? Because wa na siya starch, wa na siya sugar kaayo, so majority fiber. Okay? And you know that fiber cannot be digested by the human enzymes. So that's the reason why your vegetables contain just a few amount of calories, 'di ba? 3 grams of carbohydrates per exchange and 1 gram of protein per exchange, and that's equivalent to 16 calories, di ba? Compared to your fruits, ang one exchange sa fruits is ang calorie content is 40 calories, and then your vegetables only has 16 calories per exchange. And then naapag yung group of vegetables that do not contain a significant amount of calories. So that would really say something, no, about its quality of carbohydrates nga majority in the fiber form or in the dietary fiber form. And then the last group, this like contains your pulses. Okay, pulses is the general term, no, for beans and legumes. Okay, and then you can also find here some root crops. Okay, so this is similar to the first picture, no, shown here. This group also contains a lot of starch. Okay, but the difference of the fourth picture with the between the fourth picture and then the first picture is that the former contains more oligosaccharides. So kaning mga root crops, especially pulses, especially legumes, they contain much more oligosaccharides than the first group. And even the second and siguro the same lang sila sa vegetables na when it comes to the oligosaccharide content. Okay? So yeah, if you can notice, no, these four food groups contain different types of carbohydrates, diba? Or at least different carbohydrate profiles. Okay, so as a future registered nutritionist dietitian, you should be able not to know that um each food group contains different type of carbohydrate profile. Some of it is much healthier than the others. So when you say a healthy quality of carbohydrates, how do you define that? It's a carbohydrate profile that uh, is predominantly composed of dietary fiber. Okay, so the more the dietary fiber that food group contains, the healthier it is and the higher the quality of carbohydrates ang naa diha. If mas daghan siya sugars, na if mas daghan siya starch, mas daghan siya calories, and if i-compare nimo siya for example sa vegetables, mas less healthy siya, no. Okay, because kinahanglan yun nga daghanon nato tong fiber. Okay, so I have always been emphasizing this one that in nutrition, no, quality is actually more important than quantity. So I'm not saying that quantity is not important, but if you compare the two, no, mas important katan-awon nato ang quality. Okay, so that's why aside from counting your carbohydrates, aside from quantifying your carbohydrates, you should also look at the quality, at the type of carbohydrates. Okay, next is this one. So this figure shows you the process of photosynthesis. So let's just have a brief review, no, of this one. The process of photosynthesis involves, no, the formation of carbohydrates. So that's why it's included in this discussion. Primarily glucose. Okay, and how do the plants make, for example, a glucose molecule? It absorbs carbon dioxide from the thin air, from the atmosphere, and then the plants incorporate that carbon dioxide molecules into the water molecules, forming now your glucose. And Another byproduct of photosynthesis is oxygen molecules. Okay, so the plants can actually do that. The plants can create food in the form of carbohydrates from thin air. You can say like that, no? But dapat kinahanglan siya og input, energy input from the sun, and that is your solar or radiant energy. So it's very important because plants convert solar energy into the chemical energy. And what is that chemical energy? It is stored in the bonds of the carbohydrates. Okay? So that's why when we eat these plants nga naay mga carbohydrates, we can digest it, we can absorb it, and we can utilize or metabolize them to harvest no the energy that is trapped in there. So how do we uh unleash that energy? Of course, ato ang i-metabolize, atong i-break down. And then kana siya nga energy, ato ana siya gamiton in the form of ATP, which is our energy currency. Okay, so that's why naay energy ang foods tungod ana. Okay, essentially gina-harvest ra nato ang energy in the form of chemical energy, and actually gikan na siya ultimately from the sunlight in the form of solar energy, thereby following the first law of thermodynamics, which states that energy cannot be created nor destroyed, but it can only be transformed from one form to another. Okay, so as you can see here, the principles of physics, chemistry, and biology can meet together, no, in this concept. Okay, and yeah, that is also how nutrition is related with those three basic sciences. Okay, so don't forget about that. Okay, but I will discuss the deeper concepts regarding this and the other biochemical processes related to nutrition in the next semesters atong nutritional biochemistry. Okay. So, wait, ako wala i-check if the record ko. Okay. Sige. Of course, we have the types of carbohydrates. So, in here, no, we will just have to review what you have basically learned from your general biochemistry. Okay? So, you should know this. Okay? Review naman ni siya. So, we have the simple carbohydrates and then the complex carbohydrates. So, each of these classifications has its, um, sub-classifications. So, for simple carbohydrates, we have mono and disaccharides. So, remember which are the types of carbohydrates that are considered as simple. Okay, so actually simple carbs contain both mono and di. Okay, complex carbohydrates include oligo and polysaccharides. And your polysaccharides comprise of the glycogen, starches, and fibers. Okay, so let's discuss first the simple sugars, starting with monosaccharides. So mono means one. Saccharides mean sugar. So literally, ang translation is single sugars. Okay? Anong single sugars? Okay? Tagsara. Tagsara sila nga building block. And your monosaccharides are the building blocks of carbohydrates. You know that. Okay? So, glucose, it's the probably the most known monosaccharide out there because it's the blood sugar. It's the form of sugar that the blood maintains or that the circulatory maintains. So any other monosaccharides that enters the circulatory system is rapidly converted to glucose by primarily liver, no. So we'll discuss more of that later. And yeah, glucose is also referred as, aside from the blood sugar, it's called the physiologic sugar. Okay, because it's the most predominant form of monosaccharide in our physiology. Okay, because it's the one needed by our organs. Okay, So it's also a basic subunit of other larger carbohydrate molecules like your starch and fiber. Okay, and it's found in fruits, vegetables, and honey. Okay, so the next monosaccharide is fructose, and you learn from your basic foods that it's the sweetest among the sugars, and it occurs naturally in fruits and honey. Okay, that's why it's called the fruit sugar. It combines with glucose to form sucrose. Okay, so the nickname of fructose is fruit sugar because it's isolated first from fruits. Okay, galactose is a component of lactose, which is called the milk sugar. Okay, yeah. Um, I just want to point out no what kind of monosaccharide are these single sugars based on their structure. Glucose is an aldohexose because it's an aldehyde. Its carbon contains aldehyde, and it has like six sides, no, in its aromatic form or in its cyclical form. So that's why it's called aldohexose. Fructose is different. Of course, it's obvious now from their structures because fructose, in its cyclical form, uh, has just five sides. So that's why it's a pentaketose. Okay. And it's alpha carbon, unlike the glucose. Ang glucose man ay aldehyde, but kani siya ketone na. So that's why it's called pentaketose or pentoketose. And your galactose, somewhat similar sa glucose nga na ay six sides, so it's a hexose. Okay? It's actually another sort of aldohexose, but lahi lang iyahang conformation compared sa glucose. So that's why nilahi iyahang illustration. No? Okay? Disaccharides are another group of simple sugars, but unlike your monosaccharides, duha na. Okay? Sa iyang molecule, duha na nga building blocks, duha na nga monosaccharides. That's the term di, which means, double or duha. And the nicknames of each of these disaccharides are presented. So for sucrose, it's called stable sugar. Why? Because it's the most frequently used form of sugar, no, in our table. Mao na siyang pinaka common nga naa sa atong table. For example, kanang white or ang brown sugar nato, it's 99.99% sucrose. Okay? And it's formed from combining the two sugars here, glucose and fructose. Okay? And actually, a type of bond is formed, no, when two monosaccharides join together, and that bond is called glycosidic bond. Okay? Lactose is formed um, when glucose and galactose combine. Okay? And of course, it's called as the milk sugar. And your maltose is called the malt sugar. Okay? Malt sugar basically is derived mostly from barley. Okay? And ang byproduct sa barley, no, is malt. So that's why ginatawag siya nga malt sugar. And maltose is formed when two glucose molecules combine. Okay? We have this illustration, guys, no, that shows the how sugars join together and how they are cleaved, okay, or how they are broken down. So the process of joining two or more sugar molecules is called condensation, and the process of breaking down larger molecules of carbohydrates into simpler ones is called hydrolysis. Okay, condensation happens because a water molecule is released when the two alpha car when the two functional groups of the two alpha carbons combine. Okay? So a carbon on one monosaccharide bonds on oxygen on another, releasing a molecule of water. So in the process, no, a water molecule is ejected, okay, forming a glycosidic bond. Hydrolysis is of course a complete opposite of condensation because unlike condensation, hydrolysis needs an input of a water molecule, and this water sort of destroys no, the glycosidic bond, thereby releasing the two component monosaccharides. So in this example no naatay maltose and nag-input kag water diri din na destroy ang glycosidic bond, releasing the two glucoses. Okay? So basically this is how our digestive enzymes do their job. They hydrolyze um, uh, sugars or polysaccharides so that mahimo silang smaller no, and ma-digest sila. Okay? So that's why the other term for digest is hydrolyze. Okay? Next are manata sa simple carbohydrates. So proceed na ta sa complex carbohydrates. So complex carbohydrates uh, comprise of oligo and poly. Okay? So oligosaccharides, oligo means few. Okay? Short carbohydrate chains of 3 to 10 monosaccharides. So 3 to 10 na, no? It's beyond the number of sugars found in a disaccharide. Okay? But not long enough to be considered as polysaccharide. And yeah, examples of oligosaccharides are raffinose and stachyose. And this is what stachyose looks like. It's comprised of four sugar molecules: galactose, glucose, and fructose. So it's a tetrasaccharide. Tetra meaning upat. Raffinose is a trisaccharide, meaning it's composed of three saccharides or three sugars. There is another oligosaccharide called verbascose, which is a pentasaccharide. So it's comprised of five sugar molecules. And oligosaccharides cannot be broken down by human enzymes, but instead they are acted upon by the enzymes produced by the colonic bacteria, or the bacteria that you can find in your large intestines. Okay? And these oligosaccharides are again richly found in legumes, is what I've said ganina, and human milk. Okay? Among the mammalian milks, guys, it's only the human milk that contains oligosaccharides. And that speaks volumes no on how important oligosaccharides is in infant health, especially in the proliferation of the good bacteria in the neonates gut. Okay? And that also says something no, about the importance of maintaining or proliferating our gut bacteria in even in the young stage of life, no. Okay? Because it's very important no for the immune system of the child. Okay? uh, Aside from that, there are a lot of studies that show that infants who have been exclusively breastfed in the first 6 months of life um, are less prone to develop obesity and other lifestyle diseases like diabetes, cancer later on when they grow up. Okay? And those studies cited that the oligosaccharides found in the human milk might have played a role, no, an essential role on that, because these oligosaccharides are prebiotics. They are the foods of the colonic bacteria. So if the human milk contains a lot of them, then the colonic bacteria feeds also on the oligosaccharide content of the human milk, making them proliferate, grow, and um, establish their colony there. And as what I've said last time in the chapter 1, we have a symbiotic relationship with the bacteria that are found in our guts. So yeah, okay. So mao nang dili pud pwede guys nga especially during the first 6 months of life nga dili human milk ang gamiton, because if magamit tag cow's milk, aside from risk of foodborne disease, wala pud na siya oligosaccharides, which would compromise the growth of very important good bacteria in the infants or in the baby's colon. Okay? So, inana siya. We also have, of course, your polysaccharides. So, they are long carbohydrate chains of monosaccharides linked by glycosidic bonds. So, the glycosidic bonds found in our polysaccharides are different, no? There are polysaccharides that contain alpha glycosidic bonds, and there are those like fiber that contains the beta kind of glycosidic bonds. And which is this is digestible or can be broken down by human enzymes. Of course, it's starch, because starch is a digestible carbohydrate, and the alpha bonds between glucose molecules in starch are easily broken by human digestive enzymes. So, our innate digestive enzymes are able to recognize these alpha bonds. Unlike the beta bonds that are found in your cellulose, our enzymes cannot recognize this. So the beta bonds are impervious to human enzymes. So therefore, we do not have the capacity to break this down. Okay, we don't have cellulase. We cannot produce that. Okay. Um. So yeah. Okay. So um note no kung unsa tong nga mga bonds ang digestible by the human enzymes, kinsa tong unsa tong dili. Okay? Of course, kaning starch, it's the plant storage form of carbohydrate, and it's composed of long branch or unbranched chains of glucose. Okay? So, if you look at this, glucose ra gyud ni siya, guys. Kani, and a starch molecule contains thousands of glucose molecules joined together by glycosidic bonds. Okay? So, just imagine no, if mag-consume ta aning starch, just like kanang starch nga naa sa atong rice, kay kanang rice man nato, it's virtually 100% starch. Of course, i-breakdown man na sa ato ang lawas, no? I-breakdown man na sa atong digestive system. So, ang byproduct sa digestion ani is glucose ra gihapon. So, that's why um, even though starch is not chemically a sugar, but mahimo ra gyapon na siyang sugar after digestion. So, that's why makapataas ra gyapon siya sa blood sugar nato. Okay? Although it's not sweet tasting, but again, it pays to know no, that your starch contains just sugar, just glucose, and you know that after digestion, mahimo ra gyapon na siya, matransform ra gyapon na siya into glucose. Okay, so mura ra siya, murag di ra gyapon different ang sugar. Say for example, ang table sugar no sa rice, because after all, ma-digest ra gyapon na ang rice into sugar, which is the exact composition of your table sugar. Okay? So, you have to know that because you are majoring in nutrition, so dapat kabalo mo ana. Okay? And your starch contains two components, no? We have the amylose and amylopectin. Amylose is the linear one, although it's not exactly linear, kaya mga circular, but yeah, mura ra siya straight, no? Okay? Mo nang timailhan sa amylose. And your amylopectin is highly branched. Okay? Just like this one. Okay? So if i-combine na nimo ang duha, may mo ng starch. Okay? And we also have glycogen, which is our storage form of carbohydrates. So humans do belong in the animal kingdom. So we do not store carbohydrates in the form of starch because we are not plants. Okay, we store our carbohydrates in the form of glycogen. So it's the animal storage form of carbohydrate, and where in our body do we store this glycogen? In the liver and in the muscle. Okay, so humans store about 100 grams in the liver and 400 grams in the muscles. So, total na nimo, that's just 500 grams, or just that is just one half kilogram, no? Okay, and yeah, maura gyud na ang ato ang maximum storage capacity for glycogen. Okay, so unsa lugar ang mahitabo guys if for example puno na or full na ang storage capacity, puno na ang sa liver, puno na sa muscles. So how would the body deal with the excess carbohydrates if puno na ang glycogen storage? Okay? So I don't know if this has been emphasized in your general biochem sa metabolism na part, but uh, extra carbohydrates beyond the storage capacity of glycogen is now converted to fats. Okay? And dali ra gyud siya mapuno, guys. At an average person, no, consumes mga around 250 to 300 grams of carbohydrates per day. And yeah, taas kaayong possibility nga beyond pa ana. And with our sedentary lifestyle, nga wala kayo tay physical activity, no, so most likely di gyud ni siya magamit, di gyud ni siya ma-breakdown for energy. Ay haramang good ni siya mabawasan guys kung need na nato ang carbohydrates for energy, such such as if magdutag physical activity. Okay, but with our lifestyle with our current lifestyle, no, puno yun na siya permi. So that's why any excess sa carbohydrates nga atong ginakaon, ma-convert na siya into fats. So that's why dali ra gyud kaayo ta magtambok. Kay nga no, gamay ra gyud ang ato ang glycogen storage capacity because again, any excess of the carbohydrates is converted to fats. Okay, so that's how the body would deal with extra amount of carbohydrates. Okay, and your glycogen molecule looks more like an amylopectin molecule, no? Kaya ang amylopectin is highly branched. So, mura siya glycogen. Okay? But it's not amylopectin. Okay? It's different. Glycogen is, of course, different from your amylopectin. And negligible source of carbohydrate in the diet is meat because your meat is just muscles and, you know, the animals also store their glycogen in their muscles. So, kanang karne, naagyon na siya glycogen, but normally, kanang moabot nga meat sa market, kanatong ginapalit, wa na siya kaayoy glycogen because during the slaughtering and storage process, glycogen is rapidly converted to lactic acid. So, that's why puros na lactic acid ang naadi, wa na kayoy glycogen. So, that's why wala na gyud kaayoy carbohydrates nga makita nato sa meat. So that's why ang per exchange sa meat kay zero ang carbohydrates. Okay? Yeah. Um okay, we have your fiber. Okay, so human na ta sa mga digestible complex carbohydrates. So proceed na ta sa indigestible complex carbohydrates, which you know is fiber. Okay? And we have two different types of fiber according to the technical definition. Actually, parehas rin ni siya, pero lahi-lahi lang siya definition. Your dietary fiber is more of the general term because it includes all the complex carbohydrates, including oligosaccharides, that cannot be broken down by human enzymes and can only be fermented by the gut bacteria. Okay? Whereas those dietary fiber that have proven physiological effects are called functional fiber. Okay? So yeah, your dietary fiber is found aside from fruits and vegetables, makuha pud siya sa whole grains. Again, mao ni siya ang inyong na learn sa basic foods, no, that whole grains contain not just the endosperm but also their covering, no, kaning bran. Okay? And of course kaning germ. The germ contains the vitamins and minerals needed by the grain. Okay? And kaning endosperm, it's just 100% starch. And sadly, kanang white rice na to, kanang kanon na to, puros na lang yun na starch. Kaya nga no, during the milling process, i-remove si germ and i-remove si bran. So that's why ang nabili na lang diha is starch. Ang nabili na lang diha kay empty calories. Wala na other um, nutrients nga supposedly naunta sa bran and germ. So that's why mas nindot no if magkonsume tag cereals nga whole grains, just like your brown what's this, brown rice, because ang brown rice na to napay bran, no. Okay, so refining or milling removes fiber from whole grains and other foods. Okay, and aside from cellulose, there are other types of fiber, which include your hemicelluloses, pectins, gums and mucilages, beta glucans, which is the batch name of your senior, no, kaning incoming fourth year. Beta man sila kamo kay delta na. Okay? We also have chitin and chitosan, which is the polysaccharide found in the exoskeleton of insects and crustaceans, and lignans, which are also found in plants. Okay, so all of this are indigestible by the human enzymes. Okay, so that's why they are called as dietary fiber. But it pays to know, guys, that's the same component sa starch kay naapod sa cellulose. Glucose ra gyapon actually ang cellulose. It's just that ang bonds nga naa diri linking the glucose together in cellulose is impervious to the human enzymes. So that's why di gyud nato ni siya ma-break down. Di nato ni siya magamit ng glucose. Okay? Sige. So, actually natakal na nato ni siya last time, but in this lecture, no, specific na siya to carbohydrates. So let's just talk about digestion and absorption of carbohydrates. So of course, there is the salivary amylase in the mouth, and your salivary amylase um unsa ni catalyzes the digestion of starch. Okay, remember it's only starch, no, that salivary amylase acts upon. It does not work with other types of carbohydrates, even sugars. So salivary amylase is highly specific to starch as its substrate. Okay. So therefore, there is physical digestion as well as chemical digestion, aided by your salivary amylase in the mouth. Okay. Next is sa stomach. Okay. As soon as the bolus reaches the stomach, no, ang salivary amylase ma-deactivate because salivary amylase cannot function in an acidic environment. But there is another amylase there that um, acts upon starch molecules that are not digested in the mouth. And that amylase is called gastric amylase, which has now the capacity to work in an acidic environment such as in the stomach. Okay? Please also remember, guys, that salivary amylase as well as the gastric amylase have limited capacity when it comes to digesting starch. So you cannot expect that all starch are converted all at once in the mouth and in the stomach. No. Actually, gamay ra ilang ma-digest because there is an amylase in the lower GI tract that completes the job. Okay? So later ato na siya i-discuss. And what happens to the fiber? Of course, it remains untouched in the mouth and in the stomach because even gastric acidity cannot digest um, cellulose. Okay? Ma-turn lang siya into chyme, no? Murag mahimo ra siyang liquid form but chemically speaking wala ra gyapon na breakdown tong mga bonds nga naa didto. Okay? Um Fiber also, remains in the stomach longer and it delays gastric emptying. And this is the reason why inclusion of fiber in the diet for those who want to manage their weight is important because fibers would make you feel full longer. So, mas dugay ka mabusog, mas dili kayo ka maka-feel og kagutom kay mao nang effect ni fiber sa imong stomach because fiber remains in the stomach for a longer time. So that's why for someone who wants to manage their weight, kinahanglan nga daghan fiber sa iyang diet para mas dali siya mabusog, mas dugay siya gutmon, so therefore mugamay iyang energy intake or iyang food intake. Next is the small intestine. So ang chyme nga gikan sa stomach, no? Of course naa pa diha mga undigested, any nga mga nga wala na digest nga starch is acted upon now by the pancreatic amylase, which is now the enzyme that completes the job of starch digestion. Okay? So, actually, ang bulk sa starch digestion is processed by the pancreatic amylase. Okay? And pancreatic amylase is an enzyme produced by the pancreas. Okay? Together with other enzymes involved in the digestion of macronutrients. Okay? And there are also enzymes that are not produced by the pancreas but instead produced by the cells mismo nga naa sa small intestines. And those enzymes are the ones needed to break down disaccharides. And those enzymes are called disaccharidases. Okay? So these disaccharidases include your maltase, your sucrase, and lactase. Maltase, dali ra kaayo siya i-remember, no? Because maltase acts upon maltose. And it converts maltose into its component monosaccharides, two glucose molecules. Sucrase breaks down sucrose into glucose and fructose, and lactase um, degrades lactose into glucose and galactose. Okay? So these disaccharidases are produced by the um, intestinal brush border. Okay? So that's why ginatawag po ni sila mga intestinal brush border enzymes. Okay? So the product of starch digestion, guys, is actually maltose. So that's why ang starch nimo mahimo siyang maltose by the amylases, and kanang maltose finally i-act upon by maltase to form now your building blocks, which are your glucose. Okay? So you can now see, no, how rice is converted to glucose. So rice is acted upon by series of amylases, and then mahimo siyang maltose, and then si maltose i-act upon by maltase to form now your glucose molecules. Okay? So, yeah, mao ni siya ang pictorial representation of what I just discussed, no? Okay? Okay. Remember guys that only monosaccharides can be absorbed. Okay? Although na instances nga ang disaccharides pwede sad siya ma-absorb but rare lang na siya. Mostly, you have to digest polysaccharides into monosaccharides before they can be absorbed. And mauni ang mga mechanisms of transport of the monosaccharides. Glucose and galactose are absorbed by active transport and fructose is absorbed by facilitated diffusion. So diri na musulod no katong inyong mga na-learn sa basic sciences ninyo, di ba? Nag-discuss mo ning active and facilitated diffusion. Okay? So all three monosaccharides travel in the portal vein to the liver. So after sila ma-absorb, of course, ipadulong sila sa dugo, sa bloodstream. And then, kana siya nga bloodstream, padulong na siya sa liver via the blood vessel called portal vein. So, portal vein is a vein that connects the small intestines to the liver. Okay? So, you can say guys no that after absorption, unsa man ang pinaka first nga organ nga didto mo padulong si absorb monosaccharides, liver. Okay, so after absorption, padulong ra gyapon na siya sa liver. So there are three fates of the absorbed monosaccharide no at the liver. So once in the liver, they can either be broken down to energy, or they can be stored as glycogen, or they can just simply be released to the blood for the other organs consumption. Okay? But depende na siya sa energy availability sa body. If the body wants energy, then kani siya nga glucose i-convert into energy through a series of metabolic pathways that of course would start with glycolysis, and then if naay oxygen, then that would proceed to the Krebs cycle and ultimately to the electron transport chain. Okay? Next is if of course if sobra-sobra ang atong energy, if parehas ani karon nga sedentary ta, so most likely i-store na ni body ang carbohydrates in the form of glycogen through the process of glycogenesis. So yeah, or they can just simply be released to general circulation para gamiton siya ni other organs that need glucose, especially kaning brain, no? Brain is a heavy consumer of glucose. So, after sa liver, most likely mopadulong ng glucose sa brain. Okay? And of course, the heart po. Although ang heart, ganahan po siya fats as a source of energy. So, among the organs, no, ang heavy consumer gud sa glucose is brain and then the red blood cells. Okay? So, basically, maunang route, maunang how digestible carbohydrates become you. Okay? From digestion to, to these modes of utilization. Okay? What about those carbohydrates that are not digested? Of course, naatay mga carbohydrates ng inana, no? And those are your starches, your resistant starches and fiber. Although dili siya ma-digest sa human enzymes, ma-digest siya sa mga enzymes nga naa dito sa gut bacteria. And bacterial fermentation or digestion of these fibers produces short-chain fatty acids, which are absorbed by the intestine and used for energy. Okay? So, 2 calories per gram no ang energy yield if i-ferment siya or i-break down siya sa mga gut bacteria. Okay. I told you guys last time na nangutana about lactose intolerance, And yeah, lactose intolerance occurs as a result of insufficient lactase and low lactase activity. So tungod na siya sa genetic makeup nimo no nga dili kayo produce og lactase, which is a disaccharidase that processes lactose. So since wa kayo kay lactase, kaning si lactose mopadulong ra na siya sa large intestines, and kani siya lactose is fermentable. Magamit ni siya sa colonic bacteria. But this is not like the preferred source. This is not our preferred prebiotic, no, because lactose fermentation would result, no, to production of irritating acid and gas, which now produces your symptoms of lactose intolerance like bloating, abdominal discomfort, and diarrhea. Okay. And also, note guys that lactose intolerance is different from milk allergy. Okay. So, individuals who consume little or no milk products may be at risk of developing nutrient deficiency. So, as a result, guys, lactose intolerant people would need to adjust their diet by restricting uh, their diet, no? Um, Removing katong mga dairy products that contain high lactose. Okay? But there are other options. There are other dairy options, no, for especially katong dili kaayo serious ng lactose intolerance. They can consume yogurt. Yogurt contains little lactose because the process of fermentation breaks down lactose. Okay? Aged cheddar as well because the process of aging breaks down lactose. So, ano na kaayoy? Lactose. We also have small quantities of milk, mga around 1/2 cup per day. Acidophilus milk, this is another cultured milk or fermented milk. Example of this is kaning Yakult nato and cottage cheese. So, this is best to consume with other foods and spread intake throughout the day para dili kayo ma-overwhelm, no, ang ato ang large atong large intestines. And as what I have responded to the question last time regarding lactose intolerance, they may adapt. Okay, they can adapt. The intestinal bacteria can adapt, no, provided nga gradual increases lang sa milk. So, you may try to, train your gut bacteria to handle this lactose well through gradual introduction of milk. Okay? Yeah, so pwede siya ma-lessen, okay, through gradual increases. Okay. So, we have these alternatives to milk, okay, for those who are lactose intolerant. So, we have calcium. Since mao man ni ang mga nutrients man good guys nga naa sa milk, so kung i-restrict ni nila sa ilang diet tungod kay lactose intolerance sila, mao pud ang possible nga mawala. So, but naatay mga alternatives to milk if grabe yun ka lactose intolerant. So for calcium guys, pwede ka mag consume og tinapa or canned tinapa, no? Especially kanang bukog nila kay edible naman na, humok naman na. So pwede yun na siya ma-consume. Okay? And mga green leafy vegetables, like your saluyot, di ba? Sa case study na find out na to nga taas siya calcium. And kani pong mga cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, and bok choy. Okay? We also have vitamin D. That's another nutrient, no, that may be lacking, no, if mag-restrict kag milk. So, dietary options would include fortified margarine, fortified cereals, fatty fish, and fortified sour or rice milk. But aside from dietary options, no, you can just expose yourself to sunlight adequately, no, 15 minutes daily. of sunlight exposure can maintain your vitamin D status to the normal status. Okay? So, because again, we can produce vitamin D, no? Given that we would just expose ourselves to sunlight adequately. Okay? Riboflavin is another nutrient uh, which milk is incredibly high in. So, uh, alternatives to milk, no, for your riboflavin would include these foods. Okay. So, what are the functions of carbohydrates? Okay. Um, we have for energy. Okay. We have for sparing body protein, and we have for preventing ketosis. Okay. So, for energy, I told you last time, no, that carbohydrates are the main source of energy of the body. The preferred source of uh, energy of the body is carbohydrates. So, especially glucose. Glucose fuels the work of most of the body cell. Preferred fuel of the nervous tissue, as what I've said, in the red blood cells. So, excess glucose is stored as glycogen in the liver and muscle tissue, but again, limited lang ang capacity niya. So, aside from being a source of energy, carbohydrates would also help you spare body proteins. Now, what is the importance of sparing body protein? Um, it's essential, no, in order to what's this? To spare the body protein for more essential functions, because uh, being a source of energy is not an important function of proteins. Proteins play more essential roles in the body, like for growth and development, for the production of hormones and enzymes, and for supporting our immune system. So, if ang proteins ma-break down into energy tungod kay kulang ang carbohydrates, so dili na hinuon niya ma-fulfill kato nga mga important roles. So ma-convert na hinuon siya into energy, which is, not the main role of proteins. So we have to save the proteins from being broken down, and enable it to function, uh, to serve, no, its more important roles, by ensuring that our carbohydrate intake is enough. So kuan mga 50 to 100 grams per day. So if inani, um if 50 to 100 grams ang ato ang consumption, the body protein breakdown will be prevented. Okay? But if the carbohydrate intake is less than 50 to 100 grams, then body protein will be used to make glucose. So, ana siya. So, maupod na, guys, nga dili pud pwede no nga too low ang ato ang carbohydrate intake, because masacrifice atong body protein. Kaya remember, ang preferred nga source of energy is carbohydrates. So, kung i-restrict nimo ang carbohydrates, unsay laing choice sa lawas for energy. Remember that proteins and fats also contain energy. So, if wala kayo carbohydrates, then mag-tap ang body sa fats and proteins. But actually, guys, no, ikatuluran ng proteins, kay the body would naturally spare the body protein from being broken down. So, kung wala kayo carbohydrates, iyang itap second ang fats. So, murag si fats mo nang reserve source of energy kung kulang ang carbohydrates. But, kung tulo na gyud kaayo ang carbohydrate intake, pwede na gyud, guys, nga i-break down sad ang protein. Okay? Pero ikatulo ra siya, no? Okay? Ikaduha si fats nga gamiton. Okay? So, but the lesson regarding this is that kinahanglan nga okay ang ato ang carbohydrate intake, not too low, so that to save our body protein. Okay. We also have this function, the anti-ketogenic function of carbohydrates. Although this is not really um, a bad thing. Like ketosis is not a bad condition. Okay, but it's just important to know that if your carbohydrate intake is okay, is adequate, then your body fats will not be broken down. Okay, but if kulang ang imong carbohydrates for the body's consumption, then magsugod na og breakdown ang body og fats. And one of the products of fat breakdown in the body is ketones. So that's why the term ketosis. So if you ever want to induce ketosis, then kinahanglan nga pagamay nimo ang imong carbohydrate intake para magamit na si fat. And that's the principle behind ketogenic diet. Okay, sa ketogenic diet guys, gamay kayong carbohydrate then taas kayong fat. So unsay effect ana sa lawas, wala na kayo carbohydrate. So the body would break down fat instead. So that's why muniwang, mugamay ang timbang kay ma-breakdown man ang fat. Okay? So again, is ketosis a bad thing? Actually, not necessarily. Okay? Because a lot of studies have proven that ketosis can actually be good, no? To the health because mugamay manggod ka, musakto imong timbang, so that would have a lot of beneficial effects to the health or to the body. Okay? Yeah, but not all, especially if the kind of ketogenic diet is not right because there are ketogenic diets out there, especially if not prescribed by the registered nutritionist dietitian. Dili gyud siya maayo ang ketogenic diet. Okay? But there are ketogenic diets that are actually healthy, and we can trust the registered nutritionist dietitians to be able to come up with that kind of ketogenic diet. Okay? So this is not actually necessary. Okay, nga kinahanglan yun i-prevent ang ketosis because ketosis is not a bad thing. Okay, but it just pays to know no nga para dili mag-ketosis ang body, dapat enough imong carbohydrates. Okay? So an adequate supply of carbohydrates prevents ketosis. Okay? So yeah. Um ay other important functions ang carbohydrates, especially in the form of fiber. Fiber is beneficial for weight control by contributing to satiety and delay gastric emptying. So soluble fibers lower blood cholesterol to help reduce risk of cardiovascular disease. So fiber minimizes risk of and helps control type 2 diabetes. So insoluble fibers help promote intestinal health by enlarging stool size and easing passage of stool. So we have actually different types of fiber. We have two, soluble and insoluble. So each of these has a different function. No, first it's soluble fiber, and it contains or it involves gums, pectins, mucilages, and some hemicelluloses. So the functions include delay gastric emptying, slowing transit through the digestive system, delays glucose absorption, and binds to bile, which helps decrease cholesterol. Okay, so mao ni siya tong answer no sa question ninyo about sa diarrhea if makahelp ang fiber. Yes, there is a type of fiber that can help you with the diarrhea because it slows down the transit of uh, content throughout the digestive system, and that's soluble fiber. So aside from delaying gastric emptying and delaying transit, it also delays glucose absorption. So it's beneficial to diabetics, and it also help patients with hypercholesterolemia. Hypercholesterolemia means elevated cholesterol levels in the blood because bile is or in order to produce bile, no, the body needs cholesterol. But since soluble fiber binds to bile and actually dili na maabsorb ang actually ang ato ang body, no, tends to recycle the bile. So after secretion of bile, kaning si bile dito especially sa ileum nga part i-reabsorb na balik ni intestines para ma-recycle balik para magamit siya sa next nga digestion. But the soluble fiber binds to the bile which renders it unabsorbable. So the body would be forced to draw out more cholesterol from the blood for the production of new bile. Kay kuan naman to gina-prevent man ni soluble fiber, no, ang reabsorption sa bile. So therefore mapilitan ang ato ang body to draw out cholesterol from the blood for the production of new bile. Okay? So the food sources of soluble fiber include fruits. Okay? We also have insoluble fiber. Examples are cellulose and hemicellulose. So ang functions niya, unlike soluble fiber, insoluble fiber speeds transit through the digestive system. So it hastens up the movement of food through the GI tract. But it's the same with soluble fiber nga gina-delay po niya ang glucose absorption. And it increases fecal weight and softens stool to ease passage, and therefore it reduces risk of hemorrhoids, diverticulitis, and appendicitis. Okay? So ang soluble fiber nimo is more on anti-constipation, while imong soluble fiber is more on makahelp siya sa metabolic health. Okay? So insoluble fiber is found mostly in vegetables, in cereal grains, in legumes, and nuts. Okay? So, is too much of a good thing? Good is still good? No. Diba? You learned that from your chapter 1 yan. Kaning mga nutrients na to, pwede po siya maka-reach og toxic amounts. So, excessive fiber is also not good, which would also lead to displacement of other foods in the diet. Kay magsige na lang yun kag fiber, for example, magsige na lang yun kag salad. So, wala na kaayoy protein, especially kay kaning fiber biya nato kay mabusog ta, di ba? So, di na ta kaayo ganahan magkaon og other foods. So, um, other important nutrients would be lacking, no? Okay? Intestinal discomfort, especially nga dili nato ni siya ma-absorb. So, kung sobra-sobra pud ang fiber, no, pwede na siya mag-lead to excessive flatulence. Then, interference with the absorption of other nutrients, especially minerals, because fiber also binds, no, to minerals like calcium and iron. So, excessive fiber can also lead to mineral deficiencies. Okay, we have also the Fodmaps, which is an acronym for fermentable oligo, monosaccharides, and polyols. So, oligosaccharide polymers of fructose, fructans or phos meaning fructo-oligosaccharides. Oligosaccharide polymers of galactose means galactans or GOS means galacto-oligosaccharides. And we also have these disaccharides that are fermentable and sugar alcohols like sorbitol, mannitol, xylitol, and maltitol. Okay? So, what are these FODMAPs? FODMAPs serve as prebiotics for growth and maintenance of gut microbiome. Okay? So, need sila as the source of nourishment for our gut microbiome. So, that's why FODMAPs are good, are healthy. Okay? They must be incorporated in the diet of a healthy individual. So unsa man ang mga food sources sa atong FODMAPs? So ang fructans makita nato diri nga mga foods, ang galactans diri, and polyols kani diri. Polyols are sugar alcohols. Okay? That's just the other term. But in cases like if the patient has inflammatory bowel disorder or irritable bowel syndrome, or if the patient has non-celiac gluten sensitivity, then a low FODMAP diet is recommended because kaning FODMAP sa ilaha can irritate their intestines. So can make the symptoms severe. Diba? So that's why a low FODMAP diet is recommended if naay inani nga disease. Okay? But long-term restriction of FODMAPs is detrimental for health because of that health benefits of FODMAPs. So that's why if wala kay inani nga sakit food, so do not restrict FODMAPs because that is essential to your health. Okay? So a low FODMAP diet is only recommended if na inani nga mga sakit. Okay. So at this point, guys, ako sa siguro undangan ang recording, no? Okay? Para na atay part 2. Okay? So, kato siya ang part 1, then ang part 2 would come next. Okay.